Dear Mr. Utterson, I was born with a large fortune, a healthy body, and a hard-working nature. Because of this, it was obvious that I was destined to have a great future. But from the time I was little, I noticed that I had another side that was deeply in tune with the darker side of the force. By the time I was an adult, I found myself leading a double life, where my more respectable side always felt guilty for the bad things I did just to satisfy the darker me. And it is thus that I have come to realize that man is not truly one, but truly two. As a scientist, my studies were a little bit mystical and transcended the normal boundaries of science. In the course of my studies, I began to wonder if it was possible to split these two sides of man in order to make life easier for each side. After thinking of this, I realized how well it would apply to me. I began to become obsessed with the idea. With much pursuit of the concept, I developed a chemical solution that I believed could give life to my theory. After mixing the ingredients, I developed a solution that I called Chemical X. I read the warning label and discovered that I risked pain, nausea, tendinitis, or death. So I drank it. When I swallowed the changes, I began to feel different. After the symptoms had subsided, I realized that I had turned into an entirely different person. I looked in the mirror, but instead of repulsion, I felt a leap of joy. Even though I now looked worse than an Aggie, I realized that I was a younger, different self that would allow me to act on my darker desires. I set up a bank account and a new home for my new self, and began to turn into this Mr. Hyde each time my urge for bad became unbearable. At first, this plan worked great. I thought that it was the best plan since the invention of sliced bread. As Mr. Hyde, I could do all of the things that I wanted to do as Mr. Jekyll, but without any of the consequences. It was 2 months before the murder of Sir Danvers Carew that the first problem emerged. One night I went to bed as myself, Dr. Jekyll. But the next morning when I woke up, I realized that I had turned into Mr. Hyde, and without ever drinking the potion. After this incident, I realized that I had to stop right away, or risk turning into Dr. Hyde forever. At first, I managed to stop myself, but it wasn't very long before the darker side that had driven me to create Mr. Hyde in the first place thought it would be a good idea to try turning back into him again. And so one night, I caved in and took the potion. But this time, when I turned into Mr. Hyde, because he had been repressed for so long, he came out even more savage than usual. And so it was that that night I murdered Sir Danvers Carew. After I had transformed back into myself, I felt awful for the atrocity that I had committed as Mr. Hyde, and I knew that I had to stop myself from ever turning back into him again. Not only because of the murder I had committed, but because everyone was now on the lookout for Mr. Hyde. At first, I was actually pretty cool with being myself again, and I even enjoyed it. But after a while, I began to think dark thoughts again, and the thoughts themselves were enough to turn me back into Mr. Hyde. This was a disaster. I knew that I had to ask one of my old college buddies from my frat days to help me out. Dr. L was really cool and helped me out, but after the change, it took a double dose of potion just to stop myself from changing. Eventually, after drinking so much, I began to run out of Chemical X, and even the original supplier couldn't hook me up with exactly the right kind of Chemical X. I knew that it was only a matter of time before I would run out and become Mr. Hyde for good. I tried and tried to remake the solution, but no matter what I did, it didn't seem to work. I can only guess that the first Chemical X had something extra, because nothing was working. Finally, I used the last of my potion to leave you this letter. I am not sure how Mr. Hyde will react once he realizes that he is trapped, but I do not guess that he will allow himself to be arrested. I've hidden the letter here on the floor in the hopes that Mr. Hyde will ignore it. I'm out of potion now, so it is only a matter of time before I revert into Mr. Hyde for good.